Who could have guessed that the biggest surprise of fall camp was a good thing for Auburn?
You are Locked On Auburn, your daily podcast on the Auburn Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, welcome on into Locked On Auburn, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast. I'm your host, Zac Blackerby, and thank you so much for making Locked On Auburn your first listen every single day. Oh, it's a Ferg Friday again as Justin Ferguson of the Auburn Observer hangs out with us. It's been too long. That is 100% my fault. It's great to have you back on the show, my friend.
No, I'm happy to be back. I know the show's been blowing up in my absence, so I hope it's not because I haven't been around. So hopefully,
that's not it at all.
You don't get diminishing returns. But yeah, good to be back. Good to be back on a Friday, and good to be back. Talking Auburn football because, good grief, we've had a lot of stuff to get to.
Yeah. We were chatting before we clicked record, and it's like, okay, the biggest surprise of fall camp, like everything we listed was a good thing, but the thing that we both kind of agreed on is like Payton Thorne is getting so much love, both internally, both from the Auburn media, and now you're starting to even see it from the SEC and national media. This guy who everyone bashed at the end of the season now, and I think rightfully so, is getting flowers and respect and praise from everybody. And I'm just a little surprised by it, Ferg.
Absolutely. I mean, I felt like in fall camp, it was going to be like, hey, it's time to rally around Payton Thorne. He's our guy. We're sticking with him. You could tell that Freeze in the summer was doing that.
Right.
But I think it's the specifics of the praise for Payton Thorne. When you go out and you see he's looking sharper, and then you talk to players and coaches and they say, hey, his decision-making is a lot better. He looks a lot more comfortable in this offense. And I think when you have an RPO-heavy system like Auburn's going to want to run, being able to diagnose so much pre-snap is so key. And Payton Thorne, having played as much football as he has, I mean, that regardless of how good he was at physically throwing the football last year and the issues that Auburn had on offense, the fact that he's had so much football under his belt should be an advantage. And we see that. I think Ken Austin had a good point on Thursday when we talked to him. It's like it's more than just being physically ready to play. This isn't a video game, right? Like, Walker White he's got all the tools, but Walker White, is struggling right now as a true freshman just because he hadn't had to do this before.
Yeah.
Payton Thorne's got a good 4 years on him. And I think you're seeing that experience advantage really start to count. So yes, Payton Thorne might not have the strongest arm in the room. Definitely not the fastest dude in the room, all that stuff, but he has played the most football, and he's using that experience and channeling, I think, in an offense that could really use that kind of snap decision, quick thinking type of quarterback that you need if you're going to lean on a veteran.
I love the way J.D. Pickell of On3 broke down Payton Thorne's situation and why he should be better this year. He dropped a video earlier today where he said, in any job in the world, whether it's college football, whether it's your accounting job, whether it's, it doesn't matter what it is. If you hire a better manager, if you hire better people around you, and you stay in the job for an extra year, you're going to get better at anything, let alone sports. And it's just, we've talked about this time and time again here, and you guys have at the Auburn Observer as well, but there are so many things to point at where you could say, yes, Payton Thorne's about to take that next step, because it would almost be a surprise if he did it at this point, but he still does have to do it. I'm just surprised that folks are buying into it. I'm glad that they are, because I do think the narrative is true. He's coming back. He's got Cam Coleman. He's got Keandre Lambert-Smith. He's got Robert Lewis. You can go down the line. Rivaldo came back. 3 really, really talented running backs, a better offensive line, better offensive. I mean, you could just go on and on and on and on. And normally it would feel like SEC-wide media or national media tend to ignore that type of stuff, but people are buying into it. I'm all for it.
And we talked about this on our podcast this week, but like, you can point to things that can give you more Payton Thorne hype that have nothing to do with receivers or the guys around him. Like, I think individually, you have seen the fact that he has gotten a full offseason. Like, you got to remember, this time last year, this dude was going to be the starting quarterback at Auburn, but he was having to learn everything. And maybe that's kind of the bigger picture of this entire camp for Auburn. Like, the thing for Auburn is, it's not the what, but the how. that they're getting to work on. And I think that could help make them a better, like, they're not scrambling around trying to figure out how to install stuff. They're not trying to figure out who's playing where. They kind of know that they can just get better at getting better at football, right? Like, work on their craft, work on the finer details, what you're supposed to be doing in practice when you have some continuity around. And I think Payton Thorne's done that a ton. Yeah.
You know what they're also not working on? How to rotate in a second quarterback. And I just think we forgot how upset everybody was about that a year ago. We just kind of put that to the side. But I mean, we saw like visible frustration from everybody on the sidelines, with how that was handled. And I just think him knowing it is his offense, he doesn't have to worry about if he converts a 3rd and 6 on a nice pass, him getting subbed out on the first 2 downs. He doesn't have to worry about that anymore. I don't think. I hope not. I can't imagine that being the case this year.
It would be very surprising if it did. Just knowing the quarterback room right now, knowing.
I mean, if you thought people were frustrated last year with that, I can't imagine if that were to happen this year. But it's just talking to folks that have been at practice. I'm sure you've had these conversations too. Just seems different. Like, all of this just seems so much different than a year ago. And there are dudes, like, if you put senior year of high school Cam Coleman on the roster last year, I think it makes an impact. But seeing what Cam looks like and what Perry looks like and how smooth Robert Lewis is off the line, who I think is very underrated throughout all of this.
Oh yeah,
there's a lot of reasons.
I'm a big Rob Lewis guy this year. Yeah,
he runs he doesn't slow down when he changes directions. Ferg
got great balance. And the thing with him is, I wrote about him a few weeks ago. The thing, if you go back to his Georgia State film, it's that versatility. You throw him on the outside, he can do it. You throw him in the slot, he can do it. He'll probably be better as a slot here. But like, the dude he makes plays, and it's in a variety of ways. He can beat you deep. He can get you underneath. But yeah, that room is a lot better now. We all know that. But I think that's helping Payton as well. You heard Freeze and Ken also talk about this, is that it changes you when you feel like, hey, we're calling this play to isolate this defender, and I can trust that my guy can go win that, or he's going to be better at the top of the route than, the guys he was throwing to last year. And so it's kids, it's really talented kids, but it's also those veterans. Keandre Lambert's so smooth. Hopefully he can be back, get 100% healthy soon. Like, him and Rob, I think, have that kind of stability in that ever. And then Sam Jackson, that dude, I would love to see just a pure sprint, like, between Bryce Kane and Sam Jackson, because Sam Jackson is a blur and he's really smooth. And one of the things that Marcus Davis talked to about us this week is, like, he shouldn't be as far ahead as he is right now as a wide receiver getting back to that position, but it's because he's an ex-quarterback, and he diagrams everything and he looks at everything like a quarterback.
Yeah.
So you stick a dude like that in a slot in an RPO team, say, well, this is what the covers are running. I know exactly where to sit down, and I know
good spot.
I know my best friend and my high school quarterback is going to be there, and he's going to know how to feed it to me. And that he's a wild card, man. I don't think he's, I don't know if he's a starter. I don't know if he's going to be a superstar name, but like, I would be surprised. There's a couple of games this year where he changes things just because all he needs is a little bit of a little space.
Yeah, well, I think you said it at the end there. In a previous year, Auburn would bring in a Sam Jackson and be like, I hope he's the one. I hope he can save the offense.
And I have to be.
And he's not. He's like the fifth receiving option, maybe. Maybe. And I think that's perfect when you look at what he can do. And then next year, when some of these guys leave, maybe he can take that next step. I think it's a good spot to be in. Ferg, it seems like expectations are rising when people talk about Auburn. Is that fair? Can they live up to it? Let's discuss that in just a moment, right here on Locked On Auburn. Today's show is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time is the best place to buy tickets. Doesn't matter what it's to. It could be sports. It could be a concert. It can be anything. And Game Time has you covered. They are now an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball. So, hey, a lot of you guys listen in Atlanta. If you're, it's probably not as exciting to watch the Braves right now as it has been at some parts of the season, but still fun to go. You can get it at the best price possible. Thanks to our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app today, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, all one word, Locked On College, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Ferg, before we jump into expectations and how they are rising, give folks an update on what all's happening with the Auburn Observer.
Yeah, absolutely. This is a great time to jump on board. I mean, Zach, you know it. The access we have gotten from Hugh Freeze and his staff this year has been incredible.
So fun. Yes.
And so for a guy like me, that means you get to cram a lot of stuff into your newsletters. And so we send out a newsletter. We send it out pretty much every day of the week here, this first week of camp, and just cramming as much info as you can get about Auburn in Auburn fall camp. We're doing that with the podcast as well. A lot of cool stuff happening right now. Hey, we've got a new logo. We've got a new color scheme. We're changing some stuff up. It's about to be season 5 of the Observer, which is insane to think about.
What? That is crazy.
Yeah. And so if you want to subscribe to the Observer, you haven't done it before, we're running our fall camp special. We do this every year. $45 for a full year. So you get 25% off. Just sign up. You don't need a code. You don't need a special link or anything. Just sign up, $45. We email everything out to you as soon as it drops. And we've had a ton of stuff going on. So it's a great time. It's a great time to get on board. And we're excited about what could be a better looking football season for Auburn, which is good for everyone involved.
Yeah, I think this will probably be the best Auburn team in the history of the Auburn Observer coverage. Is that fair?
I think that's very fair, considering the first year was in a plague and it was a kind of a middle of the road team, and then 3 straight losing seasons. So yeah, it's things are looking up a little bit, which is good for business.
It is good for business. I'm with you there. With you there. This is the 5th season of Locked On Auburn too. So yeah, we had that conversation the other day where it's like, I think this will be the best team we get to do this show for. So that'll be fun.
There we go.
That'll be fun. So expectations are trending up, which normally, and this just could be me growing up in Auburn, and I know you're familiar with this too, but it always just seems like when Auburn feels like they've got a fighting shot at something, everybody dismisses it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm kind of looking at this team where it's like, I think they're solid. Like, I think they could be 8-4 this year.
Yeah. Yes.
And now you're starting to get folks outside of Auburn saying like, ooh, watch out for the Tigers. Maybe they can kind of be the can they be the Missouri of this year? And I'm like, I love it. These guys are working their tails off and I'm pulling for these dudes, but it's like some part of me is almost like, let's pump the brakes just for a second here.
Yeah. I think the thing here is you got to keep in mind, this is still a rebuilding process. And on paper, Auburn is one of the best recruiting teams in the country, but that also means you're middle of the road in the SEC right now. Now, if they keep stacking classes like they had in 24 and what they could have in 25, yes, you could start pushing up. So you're still in the rebuild mode. All right. And there's a lot of positivity coming out of camp. Hugh Freeze comes out and says, hey, we've been sharp. I've been surprised at how sharp we've been. You really like it. And yeah, this is the time to be optimistic. Players are going into interviews. They're hyping their boys up like that. That's what, and that's naturally going to get people excited. But I do think people are looking at Auburn and saying, oh, they got 5 straight home games to start the year. They can build a little momentum. Okay.
Yeah, right.
There's Jarquez Hunter. They feel good about their offensive line. They got some dudes on defense. The Cam Coleman hype, all these, and you can start kind of putting it together. Yes, I think this is probably a 7 or 8 win team. I lean a little bit more towards 8 wins, but you'll have to see how it goes. Like, that's the thing, is that there are a number of teams they play this year that have either recruited better than them over the last few years or have just been in better positions. I think of Missouri as a great example of that, where it's just like that team's just had its act together a little bit better, and you're going on the road there. But I do think for Auburn, the expectations rising is a good thing, but let's not get out of control. I do think this is a team that is still middle of the pack in the SEC on paper. I think their schedule is going to make it so they're probably middle of the pack. But if you could take that step forward and recruit along with it, you're in a good spot. You're building towards something. So that's my thing. Is like, for Auburn fans, like, yeah, be excited about this team. This team should be better. I think this team should be more fun. This team also has got to play some really good football teams that have years of a head start on them and like getting to this point. So got to keep that in mind when you're looking at this team.
But the teams, I'm going to push back at that end part there, because the teams that Auburn needs to beat to overachieve are Oklahoma, which sure, Venables has been there longer than Freeze has been here, but the guys that they're having to replace, I do think, are being overlooked by a lot of
new quarterback
folks.
And a brand new offensive line having to play in Jordan Hare.
New offensive coordinator.
That's tough. It's going to be tough.
And then the second most important game of the season in my mind is Texas A&M, who lost a ton of folks, and obviously Elko's been there for 5 minutes. And then like Kentucky and Vandy, like they just kind of seem like Auburn should beat those teams. I don't care where you play it. Auburn should beat those teams. So to me, it's all about just taking care of the teams you're supposed to and then beating Oklahoma. That, to me, that's what this looks like.
You can get to that point for sure. And yeah, like I think I'm interested to see what Missouri does, and my thing with Missouri, and I don't want to, I think of them higher than I think of Kentucky under Stoops.
Agreed.
My whole thing with Stoops in Kentucky is like, for years, I was like, all right, when they beat somebody really good, I'll pay attention. And for Missouri, I'm still kind of waiting for that as well, but they've got dudes, obviously, and that's a really good team. So it's possible that Auburn goes there. I mean, look, this Auburn team was as flawed as it was last season. Took Georgia down to the wire. Should have beaten Alabama. Okay, yeah. So on paper, this team's going to have the mentality of, look, we can hang with anybody. I don't think they look at anybody on their schedule and say we can't compete with it. Now, Georgia on the road is going to be a whole different animal, but you feel like you're a better team this year. That's the thing about this team. Like, it could go in a number of different directions. I have a hard time seeing this bottom out. Like, I think they've got enough layups on their schedule that they should be in a pretty good spot. And so, to your point, Zach, like, I think, yeah, you start looking at, okay, give me a couple of swing games where I can say, well, what's the difference between 6-6 and 8-4, or 7-5 and 9-3? Like, yeah, they're definitely in that range, which, I think Auburn fans have been dreaming to get back into this for several years now.
Yeah, and I'm trying to project like what that moment could be. I mean, I remember the last time Auburn beat a ranked team when Harson's team beat Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
And well, hindsight, was a really odd game.
Really weird game.
But I just remember leaving the stadium after that game like, oh, here we go. And we had no idea that he wasn't recruiting and all that stuff at the time. But like, as far as just like excitement about what the direction of the program.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as recent memory, that's the highest moment since the 2017 Iron Bowl for me, when Gus went in there and it's like, we're trending up. And sadly, I was like one of the last big games he won. But after the Oklahoma game, if Auburn wins this year, to me, I think that could be a significant game, a significant moment where a few years from now, we're going to be able to look back and circle it and say, that's when this ascension really started.
Yeah, it is a launch pad type of game. It is a game that if you lose, I don't think anybody's going to go hit the panic button, but then you got to go play Georgia. Then you got to go on that road stretch. So it does get tougher from there. But yeah, that is a game where, yeah, it is a launch pad type of game. And then those first four that you have, obviously, take care of business against Alabama, A&M, and New Mexico. It's not New Mexico State, it's New Mexico. You've got Cal in week 2 and Arkansas in week 4. And I think beat Arkansas. That's got to be just beat them. You did really well against them last year, and there's no telling what they're going to look like by week 4 this year. That Cal game, I think, is such a litmus test game for Auburn, because if they're at home and they, last year they had a scrape by,
they should spank them this year.
If they beat them and beat them solidly, you're like, all right, it's an early, like, this is how much better this team could be this year, and that's exactly what you want. And so there's even some early ones where it's like, I mean, the momentum built. I know 5 straight home games is not fun for people who live around here, and like it can kind of get wearing out. But like for a football team, it is prime, like, build the snowball territory.
Yeah, especially with a team that's trending up like Auburn is. Ferg, one more time, how can people check out everything you've got going on?
AuburnObserver.com. Check it out. $45 for your first year if you want to hop on board.
Yep, do it. It's worth every single penny. Please like the video. Please subscribe. We'll see you next time. This has been Locked On Auburn.